Testimonies. Now, testimonies, are essentially, stories where, people get saved and they come to know Jesus, and, how you get to know God and what God does with your life. That's a testimony. And I want to tell you mine. So essentially, I love the word essentially. It's crazy because I was brought up I was born in Croydon and I moved to Wales when I was 2. That's why I got a Welsh accent, but I was born in London. And my family, my mum's side, what's really funny is her father was into black magic, and he was a very, like the Freemasons and black magic and things like that. And he was really high up. He was like one of them high priests. And I remember when I was a child, I remember kind of just walking in the house, and I went to open his room one day, and I just remember it really vividly. It was just like this noise that came out as a growl. It was like horrible, and the door shut. And all my life, I've sort of had, Satan's footprints all over my life. So, if I look at, where I was, from that sort of back up with my mum's parents and, black magic and things like that. The one thing I know is that when my grandfather saw me as a child, he wanted to take me to Jamaica when I was 13. And the Blue Mountains. And essentially he died that year. And I didn't understand until years later, until God told me that he was going to take you and do something. So, I know demons are real. I know if they are real, then Jesus is real. Because in my mum's house, there would be, things that I couldn't explain. Things really do go bump in the night. And there are things in the darkness. And it's scary. There's, moments where I'd be sleeping in my mum's house on the sofa, and, we'd be sat there in the living room, and we just hear the most unusual noises, like growling and chanting, and it was all coming from above our heads in our bedroom. And doors would be opening, and, there was just the most craziest of experiences. So even seeing something follow me up the stairs, which is probably about 6'3", 6'5", I know it's pretty big, and I just shut the door because I knew Jesus at that time. So if I knew that Satan was real from a young age, I then started to understand that from an outreach football team, like there was a Christian team called Gendros, and it's a very small Baptist church in Swansea, and they went against the grain. Essentially, they did an outreach to start a football team in a Christian league with a bunch of unsaved boys, and I was one of them. But, by the end of it, the team went absolutely mad because we were all unsaved and we didn't know Jesus. But the beauty of God's timing was that he saved 2 boys out of that 20 lads. And there was me. And there was another guy called Lee. And I just loved the fact that from that day forth, I went off to train. And I had this desire to start to be an actor. I was like, well, I can't even speak. So I went to a college course in Signing College in Wales, and I remember the first time I got enrolled on the course, and I saw a play And I was like, I want to do that. I want to do it. And I couldn't even say one line. And then by the end of it, by the grace of God, you know, you had 10 people around me all repeating the line to me. And then 2 years later, I was auditioning for drama school, and it broke this fear, and I was spending time with God trying to learn a page. Then a page became 2 pages, and 2 pages became 10 pages, and all of a sudden I was playing parts in a college. Then I auditioned to drama schools, and it's so hard to get into the RADAs, the Lambdas, the Bristol Ovics, but I auditioned to 12, and I got into about 7. And my favourite one was Lambda. And I was like, how the heck can someone like me, who couldn't even say one line, do that? Well, I'm moving on. At the time I was in drama school, my mum's brother, in the same house where my mum's parents were, he died in my 2nd year, and they discovered his body, which is quite traumatic. Essentially 3 weeks later. And you ever walked into a room where there's so much heaviness? It's like overwhelming heaviness. And I just walked in there, and I just got hit by heaviness, and I just felt someone's eyes watching me, and there was no one in the house. It was eerie. But I just trusted God, and it was scary. So I had to go through the house, and it was full of just the most horriblest of things. This beautiful home that was alive then actually became something that was just completely ill. You know, it was horrible. But it was the same home that, you know, my family had died in. It was the same home that on that 2nd year of drama school, which is the hardest thing in my life, I started to go off the rails. You know, all that pressure, my mum kind of left me deal with the, you know, the funeral arrangements and all that sort of stuff, sitting in on the inquest on how he died, but then going into these 15-hour days of drama schools. And then I went off the rails and did loads of drugs, did loads of partying, got it all wrong. And I must have took copious amounts of drugs. And then I woke up and I realised I must have been sleeping. Like, when you've done copious amount of drugs, you just pass out. And I passed out. And then I looked out the window and I saw this figure. It was like, you know, like a demon, essentially. And then I turned around and this voice was starting to shout at me. So I ran downstairs and hit my face on the door, called the police. And the police came, and it wasn't just any police, it was the CID. And they said to me, have you been taking anything, son? And I said, no, I haven't taken anything. And I had 4 days off drama school after that. This is 10 years ago, 4 days off. And essentially I felt like I was dying in bed. And I cried out to God, I cried out to Jesus, I said, Jesus, I gave my life to you, and I've got it completely wrong. And I said, God, I can't do this. And bit by bit, from then days forward, I started to regain my strength. And God sent me my stepmom to literally not come in and say anything or do anything. That's all she did, is she travelled all the way from Wales to London and made me soup. You know, she didn't say anything. She didn't tell me how bad I was. She just popped in and said, hi, I love you. Is everything all right? And made me soup. So I went into the principal's office, and I was in about 2.5 grand's worth of debt. And the principal sat me down and just said to me, do you know Peter O'Toole? And I said, yeah. He said, he had the same problem you've got. And I was like, wow. He said, I hear you got £2,500 worth of debt over your head. I said, yeah, I'm in trouble, and all these bad things happening, you know, like someone just died in my family, I'm dealing with an inquest, I'm trying to finish drama, so it's absolutely crazy. And he sat me down and he said, okay, I'm going to pay it off. Go back to class. And I saw so many different characters of how the prodigal son story happens. How God's hand was literally like that. And that's where it begins. That's why when I look at all the tracks over my life where God had his hands over my life, but Satan tried to crush my life, it was only through the people that he brought in my life to pull me through it. Just met the future of my life, the one who's going to be my wife to be, and her name is Lydia. She's great, and God set it all up. But it may look all rosy and good to you, seeing this story down a camera. But I tell you what, it's been hard. It's been hard because there's been resistance. I suppose I've had to raise my faith level, speaking out words and fasting and praying and cracking on, but I have to step up and preach the word of God. But you know what? It's not been easy. That's all I've had is Jesus. So I suppose this video was just to make it real of, I come from a background of satanic influence in my family, and I've pleaded the blood of Christ and confessed my sins and asked God to forgive my past generations and all these different things. But the enemy is out to take me down. But God's grace is sufficient for me. The one thing I do know is if I got this far, then there was purpose. One thing I do know is to meet people like Muse, we made videos about, or all these different things of acting on jobs and speaking to different people in the industry. I knew that there's one thing, that I get to do God's work in that industry and talk to people about Jesus, and people give their lives to Jesus on that job. But to do this is an honor. To leave a trademark for people to know about Jesus. So I was a broken man, the worst of them all, a sinner. I still am a sinner. Don't think I got this together. But the one who does was Jesus. And the one who rests upon me and his righteousness rests upon me to make me right in the eyes of God was Jesus' death on the cross. So that's why I say to you, I couldn't have earned my relationship with God. It was all about confession of my mouth of my problems. And inviting him in to heal me and change me and make me more, like his son. Because it says in the word, he will conform me to the image of his son. And his son is good, full of mercy, compassion and goodness. So guys, I just wanted to tell you my testimony of you may be going through painful stuff, going through it all, drugs, girlfriend got rid of my child. She had an abortion. Pain. But I know one thing is that God had a plan for everything. I'll always love the fact that you can never not be real on camera. You always got to tell the truth, because people pick it up no matter what. So guys, from me to you, Jesus is real, and he does rebuild lives. And I don't know what that little story meant for you, but it meant a lot to me, because that was my life and my next chapter. But if anyone out there has been through pain, if anyone out there has even got this far in watching this video, God is very real. So is Jesus Christ. And he really loves you.